Wasted Time by Edward Hertrich. Read by Jonathan MacDonald. Published by Dundurn Press, Toronto. Audiobook published by Hertrich. Introduction. While I will appreciate any interest our youth may have in the contents of this book, I place greater emphasis on my hope to inspire adults to contemplate my life, to contemplate their own past mistakes, and to look toward their charges, for our young deserve to have an interest shown in each of their lives. They deserve to receive assistance when they become confused in their life choices. They deserve for us to genuinely care, to show them proper direction and guidance, to intervene when negative influences present themselves. Everyone knows the young will err. We know that, for we all were young once. Who among us has never made a mistake? Some were just fortunate not to have been noticed. It is incumbent upon older people to restore a youth upon a proper path, with dignity and self-esteem intact. To do otherwise would be to fail them. To do otherwise would be to help create the monsters and demons we find within our society. It is far easier to open a closed heart than to open a closed mind. One simply requires compassion and understanding. The other requires strength and determination. The following pages chronicle my life. They are memories, my memories, and as such are fact to me. Many of these facts can be supported by government records. The contents of this book are in no way meant to glamorize the violence and the drug subculture that I experienced. There was no glamour. Every violent act involved some degree of concern, including various levels of fear. Every high was simply that, an aberration from reality. Every contact with law enforcement was met with deep consternation and regret. Movies and novels, fact or fiction. Criminal lifestyles portray illusions of power, wealth, and excitement. These tales are etched upon the imaginations of youth. In some areas of society, these illusions are bolstered by today's criminal elements. The superficiality of their lifestyle is hidden. Like moths to a flame, our young are drawn to experience, to experiment. Negative occurrences do repel almost all, mainly without their peers noticing. Those that continue the experience do learn the reality of life outside the law, an unkind legal system, a harsh correctional system. Most every criminal offender, regardless of age, comprehends the risk to their liberty prior to their acts. Still, some stubbornly pursue the lifestyle, leading them to the world of concrete and steel, a world that tests one's strengths and vulnerabilities. Events will occur within this world that will impact individuals to varying degrees. Fortunately, many will traverse their sentence without physical harm. None escape with indifference. Most choose rightly never to return, to remain upon a proper path. Those few who do return recognize their luck will last for only so long. There is always a bigger, meaner dog in the yard. Sometimes there is a pack of dogs. Either way, at the end of a lengthy criminal career, whether one is whole or crippled, retirement without reward is inevitable, and sometimes sudden. Prologue. The year was 1962. In just over a year, the President of the United States of America, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, would fall to an assassin's bullet. I was in my first grade of elementary school at Regent Park Public. I was 6 years old. I had begun to walk up the 8 concrete steps that led off school property and onto the path home for lunch. A sudden rush of older children began to race up the steps, passing me. I was accidentally bumped hard from behind. Losing my balance, I fell headfirst into the edge of one of the steps. The concrete sliced deep into my forehead. As I got back onto my feet, I held one hand against the gash, pressing hard. I attempted to retrieve my fallen textbook with the other hand. "Leave that," an older child said, taking my free hand. She led me back into the school and down the hallway to the principal's office. The girl kept yelling for help. The principal appeared. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Him," the child said simply. The principal fastened her gaze on me. "And what is wrong with you?" she smiled. I removed my hand and looked down at my palm. It was red and sticky. As I lifted my head back up to look at her, the blood gushed forth from the deep wound. It flowed down my face. The principal fainted. She hit the floor flat on her back. Teachers milling about in the hallway raced to her assistance. As they drew closer, they noticed me. They left the principal lying there. One teacher picked me up, while another applied pressure to the wound. A third teacher had immediately raced out the back door of the school over to the adjacent 51st Division Police Precinct. In no time at all, I was carried into the back of a police paddy wagon. With sirens blaring all the way, I was whisked to the emergency doors of the nearby Hospital for Sick Children in downtown Toronto. At 6 years old, I had just been given my first ride in the back of a paddy wagon. The first of over 1,000. Part 1. Chapter 1. The Younger Years. Regent Park, Canada's first social welfare housing project, is located in the city of Toronto in the province of Ontario. The neighborhood sits 1 mile east of the city's downtown core, just north of the shore of Lake Ontario. It covers an area 4 city blocks by 4 city blocks. Since its inception in the 1950s, low-income families have been provided affordable housing there. Based on the number of family members, they were either placed in row houses or an apartment in one of the many 3- and 6-story rust-colored buildings. 5 high-rise buildings also provided domiciles within the project. The infrastructure of brick and concrete left no illusion that this neighborhood was anything but a project. From the onset, Regent Park was regarded as a high-crime area, the highest most every year in the city. Notorious for violence, renowned for drugs, Regent Park made knowledgeable people regard its borders with great trepidation. In the summer of 1956, my family took up residence in one of the many row houses. I spent the first 16 years of my life as a resident of South Regent Park. Considering the hardship each family in Regent Park endured, people were generally friendly to each other, but aloof. Those more familiar, whether by proximity or social ties, would converse. People respected each other's privacy, unless action dictated otherwise. Child endangerment definitely prompted intervention. Interloping otherwise was regarded with disdain. Men, fathers, were rarely seen. They worked long hours, were dead, or were divorced of their families residing in Regent. The project housed 2 elementary schools with another on its border. The children attended class together and played together. The women busied themselves maintaining households while nurturing their young. Like that of my mother, who bore 11 children, their lives were strenuous. For us children, ignorant of the outside world or its responsibilities, life was good. I recall the sky being unusually gray, not blue at all for a midsummer morning. I had toddled out of the family backyard to sit with a neighbor, a girl my age, on the curb of the parking lot that lay out back of our row houses. She was sad. We began to look at all the debris that the wind had blown into the trench our feet now rested upon. Beer bottle caps, empty cigarette packages, bubblegum wrappers. At 4 years old, we imagined these as treasure. A loud bang pierced the air, accompanied by a woman's screams. We looked over our shoulders to see the girl's mother racing frantically along the side of the row houses. Another bang followed. We looked over our other shoulders to see the girl's father standing outside his backyard. Before the third bang had a chance to reverberate, I was airborne. Flying high up in the air, I landed on my mother's hip. Where had she come from? "You too," she snapped as she yanked the little girl off the curb. She took off running, a child on each hip, back to the safety of our house. She locked the back door and peered out through a window. I never heard the last bang, but I heard the story of an unfaithful wife who had escaped death and a distraught husband who, after failing to hit his target, sat in his chair and ended his own life. The remaining family moved soon after. I felt sad for the little girl, and I would miss her company. My own family was no stranger to domestic violence. My alcoholic father had struggled against the burden of raising 11 children on a paltry wage and his need to be the man amongst his friends at the local taverns. After administering several physical beatings upon my mother and eldest siblings, he was, I am told, convinced to leave the family abode at the insistence of a loaded shotgun. I was 5 years old. Growing up in Regent Park, I found domestic violence to be a prevalent factor in the lives of many families. Of course, it was sheltered in-house as much as possible. The Children's Aid Society was regarded in the neighborhood as home wreckers and child stealers, and the police were always the enemy of the people. My best friend as a child was my next-door neighbor, Wayne. He was the middle brother of 3 who all suffered the affliction of muscular dystrophy, wheelchair-bound, with no muscle control. I would talk and watch TV with them daily. We played board games, such as checkers or chess, but I would have to move the men for them. Once I was big enough to push Wayne in his wheelchair, we'd go around the neighborhood, to the corner stores, the restaurant. As I got older, around 9, he had me push him to the salvage yards and the dockyard beside the lake. Wayne seemed to know everyone, and all the men would give him coinage. We would be rich when we returned, upwards of $3 apiece. One morning, he talked me into pushing him down to the C&E grounds. The exhibition had just opened, and we wanted to see the Midway and go on some of the rides. So we set out. We got lost. With night having fallen and rain coming down, I pushed Wayne into a corner store in the city's northwest end. The woman took one look at us, Wayne in his wheelchair, and called the police. We both knew our addresses, so the police drove us home. Both our mothers thanked the police profusely. Wayne's mother was kissing his head. My mother was tanning my ass. They still let us hang around together. Wayne would pass away at an early age because of his disease. His 2 brothers suffered the same fate. I was very fortunate as a young boy to meet a wealthy family from Scarborough. The Lows approached my school's principal, searching for an underprivileged girl to spend the holidays with their lone daughter. They had 2 sons as well, but no one to provide their daughter company. Since my family had 8 girls, they were directed to my house. My mother was receptive to the idea, but none of my sisters would go alone. I was sent with them in the hope of quelling any homesickness they might feel. I loved the vacations with this family. 4 of my sisters would try, but all returned home early. They did not like the daughter. Being with the 2 sons, I had no such problem. I was taken to Fantasy Island in New York, to productions of Camelot and the Nutcracker Suite at the prestigious, then, O'Keefe Center. We'd go to the drive-in, movies, the exhibition, tours of Old Fort Henry, and country farms. The best part of this relationship for me was the attention I received from the couple. They'd dote on me, even tucking me in bed at night after we said our prayers. This was all new to me. They'd take me for haircuts at a real barber shop, buy all the clothing I needed, and the food they would serve was a huge upgrade from the diet I received with all my other siblings on a welfare budget. After a couple of years of holidays, the couple approached my mother with their hope of adopting me permanently into their family. I had no idea they would do that, or I could have told them that was a huge mistake. My mother was aghast. She forbade them from seeing me. She could not believe they would expect her to give up any of her children, regardless of the large numbers in our family. As a youngster, I just assumed the Lows had given up on offering opportunities to the underprivileged and had let me go. I would see them many years later as an adult, and sometimes, as an adult, I would wonder where my life would have gone if my mother had agreed to the adoption, but I would dwell on that only briefly. Regent Park Public School ended at grade 6. Further upgrading had to be continued at other schools. At grade 6 graduation, my friend Perry would be awarded the school valedictorian award. I was very happy for him. We'd become friends as soon as his family had moved into Regent, but my mother was incensed. I had attended the school, completing each year with straight A's or A+. Perry had only transferred in for the last 2 years. We'd hung around together, and he was my study partner. Our grades reflected our closeness. My mother felt I was overlooked in favor of the school's minority equality agenda. Perry was Japanese. I always felt the grade 6 music teacher was the deciding factor. He had lobbied hard on Perry's behalf. He had wanted me to attend his private tutoring lessons after school, and I had refused. He had even asked my mother to talk to me about it, but I would not budge. He was the only teacher that ever gave me the creeps. After graduation, my mother would make Perry feel uncomfortable when he called on me, and she definitely forbade me from assisting him in any further home studies. She wanted me to disassociate myself from Perry, but I drew the line there. I felt she was being unfair. I remained friends with Perry until his family moved out of the project a year later. I would read in the Toronto tabloids many years later that he had achieved the distinction of being the most robbed pharmacist in the city. He worked just a city block southwest of our old school. The music teacher would also find himself referenced in a Toronto tabloid, but as an offender in a child sexual molestation case. I was happy Perry gained a profession, sad for the violence he was a victim to. As for the music teacher, I felt total vindication about my juvenile decision to avoid him. I had only one real confrontation in Regent Park Public School, and it came during my last year. A new girl, Karen, had transferred in. One day, as school let out, and Perry and I were walking out of the schoolyard, we saw a huge crowd gathering. Curious, we went to see what was going on. 2 boys were holding Karen's arms down while another boy was trying to kiss her. She was moving her head to avoid that and sobbing. I grabbed the main antagonist and threw him on his butt into the crowd. Then I threatened the other 2 to let her go. They did. I told the whole crowd to leave her alone or they would have to deal with me. Then Perry and I walked her home. It really was no big deal, but Karen and her parents thought so. We became good friends after that, and remained so throughout the years. I attended grades 7 and 8 at Park Public School, also within the project. I met 2 boys my age who would be my closest friends during that period. Arnold was a year older, but far more mature. He loved his alcohol and the girls. Bobby was different. He loved his chemicals, particularly solvents. Girls were also a major focus in his life. The pair would fall in love with new girls almost weekly, sometimes the same girl, and then that would be a problem. They would argue and fight. I was constantly asked to choose a side, but I wouldn't. I would go steady with many girls and either pack them in or get packed in. I really cared less. It was juvenile stuff. I was just doing what all the other kids did. My grades were far more important to me than feeling a boob. It may have been the fact that I had 7 older sisters that made the exercise less appealing to me at that time. I'm not sure. I am sure that after grade 8, I was totally interested in the girls around me. They, however, were interested in the older boys, or those who were involved in crime or the drug subculture. This did not escape my notice. I began to wonder if I'd missed a step in my personal development. As far as my upbringing went, I felt fortunate. Not knowing the benefits of a middle or upper-class life, I wanted for little. With such a large family, I didn't lack company or protection, except when one of my older siblings would minorly assault me. I was the second youngest of 11, and, as kids will be kids, I'd do something to anger one of them now and again. And again. After elementary school, my focus shifted from books of knowledge to gaining social acceptance from the older teens. I hadn't matured to the point of fully appreciating those closest to me. As a young teen, I was both diminutive and passive. I had school friends, but I wanted to be part of the in crowd, the cool kids. I associated myself with the local drop-in community center, a hangout for the older teens I began to mimic, smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol. My abuse of further substances was quick to follow. It was the time of Woodstock. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and the Rolling Stones filled the airwaves. Cheech and Chong provided comedy for the new drug era. Marijuana, hashish, and LSD, acid, flooded the project. Mescaline, MDA, peyote, and a number of other chemical drugs seeped in. Methamphetamine sat just on the cusp. It seemed the more times I used drugs, the more I was accepted by the group, and I wanted to be accepted. My mother was anguished by my change in lifestyle. She held hope that I would be successful in life. That hope was fading fast. High school began for me in Toronto's West End at the Central High School of Commerce, outside of the project, halfway across the city and away from my friends. One of my sisters, 3 years my senior, had preceded me into this school. Other than her, who I rarely saw, I knew no one. The first thing I learned in high school was that I was poor. Other students did not bring their lunch in a brown paper bag. They ate at restaurants, pizza shops, or the local stores around the school, or they lived nearby. Their clothing was relatively new and far more expensive than my own. The vast majority had graduated from the same area schools, and so they all knew each other. Nobody else from Regent Park who graduated that year had chosen this commercial school so far away. From Regent Park, they went to area commercial, technical, or vocational schools if they didn't have the misfortune to go to reform school. I was not ostracized at Central Commerce. Being smaller than most every male student, definitely poorer, and a total stranger, my self-esteem was severely tested. I liked two girls, totally different from each other, but both more mature than I. Dory was Jewish and cute as a button, experienced in older boys and drugs. Lena was an Italian goddess whose father knew it, and he never let her out of his sight after school. Each day I would see him on his porch waiting for her to exit the school. The first year I made a strong effort, affecting good grades as well as excellent attendance. That did little to alleviate my daily depression. When the school year ended and summer was upon us, I reveled in illicit drugs and alcohol once again with my peers in the project. Over the summer, I hung out with an older teen named Ray. We would meet in the mornings or early afternoons and go to various places, stealing bicycles. We had a fence, a buyer of stolen merchandise, in the project, and we would be paid on delivery. We also stole from cars, storage lockers, from almost anywhere. It paid for food, beer, and drugs. Jessie, a girl from my new high school, had moved into the project and we became friends. One night, I introduced her to the drop-in center. We sat and talked for a few hours, and then I walked her home. Well, almost. As soon as we got to the road across from her building, we saw a lot of police cars. One cop in front of the building yelled, "That's him! You! Don't move!" He was directing his comments at me. I had a small bag of pot on me, as usual. I knew I was in danger of being arrested. I looked at the closest cop. He had the reputation for being the fastest cop in Regent, and he was waiting for traffic to clear so he could run across the road. I wasn't waiting. I turned and ran. Halfway down the street, I turned to look back. He was pursuing me and gaining ground fast. I headed for a wall that adjoined two sets of row houses. It had a couple of small indents that I used daily. I never broke stride as I hurdled the wall just as the cop's hand brushed the sole of my sneaker. I heard him hit the wall with a grunt. Landing on the other side, I sped to the closest high-rise building and into one of the many ground-floor apartments of people I knew. We turned out the lights and peered out the window. I could see the cop now gingerly making his way back up to the building, his counterparts, and his vehicle. A few minutes later, I snuck through the project in the shadow of night, back to my house. Bobby was outside the door. He was sniffing a rag soaked with nail polish remover. Again, he had serious issues. His hand was bloody. "Can I come in?" he asked. "No, my mom's home and you stink," I answered. "I'll see you tomorrow." His other hand was bleeding pretty good. "What'd you do to yourself?" I asked. "Oh, punched out some windows at 600, he said. That was my new friend's building. I was angry. "You got $5?" he asked. I gave it to him and went inside. Not long after, the phone rang. It was the lead counselor from the drop-in, who happened to be Bobby's oldest brother. "The cops are here. They want to talk to you. Either you come down now, or I'll give them your address." I looked at my mom and then told him, "I'm on my way." The Regent Park Community Center was a 2.5-story brick building in the middle of South Regent on Sackville Street. Its basement floor contained a washroom, a couple of small side rooms primarily used for arts and crafts for the younger kids, and at the rear, a large room with ping-pong, shuffleboard, and bocce ball tables. The main floor housed a hangout room, painted black with black lighting and all kinds of splashes of different colored paints to give a psychedelic effect. The main rear room was much bigger, with large steps to sit on at the back, a stage at the front. Movies were shown there every so often, but usually it was just a place to sit around and listen to music. The upstairs floor had the offices of the counselors who worked in the center. As soon as I entered the upstairs office, the one cop jumped off the couch and pulled up his pant leg. He'd skinned himself pretty good on the wall. "You little bastard," he started. "Hold on," interrupted the counselor, glaring at me. "You upset a lot of people tonight in their homes, not to mention the damage you did to the building. I'm ready to ban you from the center, and I just might kick your ass every time I see you," he threatened. "I didn't do shit," I answered, "and we both know either of my brothers would kick your ass if you laid one hand on me." The cop jumped in. "If you didn't do anything, why did you run?" "You were chasing me," I reasoned. Then I looked at the counselor. "Me and you have to talk away from them," I said. He looked at the cops. "Please, he's not going anywhere. Just give us a minute in the hall." They acquiesced. "I was here with a girl when those windows got smashed. Ask anyone downstairs," I told him. "How did you know about the windows if it wasn't you?" he growled. I told him about running into Bobby. He knew us two were often mistaken for each other, and he knew his brother had problems. "Shit," he muttered. "Yeah, shit," I agreed. "I ran because I had a bag of pot on me. I didn't know anything about the vandalism." "I know I have no right to ask, but would you do me a favor? Don't mention my brother. I'll arrange for them to bill you, no criminal charges, and when you get the bill, bring it to me and I'll pay it." I agreed. I wouldn't have mentioned Bobby, but I would have fought it in court before I paid a nickel. The cops agreed to the counselor's terms and left, but not before telling me that they would get me one day. And these two would. The 4 13-story high-rise buildings in South Regent had fire escape staircases on either end. These sheltered areas provided a space where the youths could get high or drunk without being seen by the law, especially during inclement weather. These stairwells would always smell like stale beer, urine, and on good days, marijuana. The middle floors were ideal in the event of police chases. There were a great many of those, but no one ever seemed to get caught. We could see out the narrow windows on each landing, or hear people entering the fire escapes, and could see partway down the stairwells who was coming. The cops just could not maneuver around the stairwells as quickly as the neighborhood kids. We'd slide along the round metal railings, slingshotting our rear ends around and down each flight with the help of the vertical pole at each floor. We could descend 7 floors to the ground before they could make it down 3 flights. Going up the concrete steps, the cops had too much equipment to hang on to as they chased us. If the exits were blocked, then we'd extend the cat-and-mouse game up and down the staircases until the foot patrol grew tired, or we would simply deke into one of our friends' apartments. On good weather days, we'd sit outside in the parking lots to socialize and get high. We always had to watch for local foot patrols, though. A couple of weeks later, I walked Jesse home again. As we reached the building, some teens were having a party in one of the ground-floor apartments. "Look at this asshole!" one yelled out the living room window, and soon there were a few guys there. "Hey, baby, lose the loser and come in here. We'll show you a good time." "Hey, buddy, what are you looking at? You want your face kicked in?" We just kept walking. We took the stairwell up to her 3rd-floor apartment where we said goodnight. Back down on the 1st floor, I unhooked the cover of the lighting fixture and took out one of the long fluorescent tubes. Then I went and knocked on the door of the partygoers. "What do you want?" the teen opening the door said. I punched him square in the face, knocking him back into the apartment. I followed. A second teen jumped up off the couch. I smashed the glass tube across his face, sending him to the floor. I then went after the other 2 who had been instigating through the window earlier. The cops charged me for assault. A week after that, Bobby talked me into accompanying him down to the old city hall. He had a court date to appear for some minor theft. After court, we crossed over to Nathan Phillips Square and smoked a couple of joints. Then we went to the Eaton Center. Once inside, he headed straight to the jewelry display counters. As soon as the salesperson wasn't watching, he grabbed some items. "Here, put these in your pocket. I don't have a coat," he said. "Fuck off," I answered. "I do this all the time. Don't worry. We'll go over to the pawn shops on Church Street and trade them for cash. I do it all the time." Like an idiot, I relented. He walked out of the store ahead of me. I followed. A huge black hand grabbed my left shoulder. "Did you pay for that?" "I don't have anything," I answered, and, looking at Bobby a good 10 feet in front of us, I continued. "He does." The man beckoned Bobby to come back. I was motioning him to run. He walked back. As the store detective reached out to grab Bobby, I drove my elbow into his groin area. He let go of my shoulder. I spun off him and started to run back up the street. I got about 3 strides before I hit smack dab into the stomach of a uniformed policeman. I was arrested and given a summons to appear in court. I quit hanging out with my sniffer friend. I was 16. The summer of 1972 was going downhill fast. I still had my stolen bicycle gig going with Ray. We'd go out almost daily. Every so often, the local cops would be sitting in their car when we'd ride into the project, and they would give chase. Their cars could not access the narrow concrete walkways, though, and they certainly couldn't run fast enough to catch a bike, but still, they'd try. We would watch from a distance after those chases, just to ensure they didn't see where our fence lived. Then we'd drop off our stolen merchandise and collect our monies. One summer day, as we neared our target area, we passed a van with the keys still in the ignition. It was full of televisions. Ray ran to the driver's door and jumped in. "Let's go!" he yelled. "You're crazy," I said, and continued walking. He started the van up and pulled up beside me. "Come on, this is a great score," he said. I looked at him hesitantly, then hopped in. We drove to Scarborough to his father's place and stored the TVs. As we walked back to the van, I said, "Leave it. We'll take the subway home." "Screw that. We're driving back to Regent," Ray laughed. "Leave it," I said again as I continued walking past the van. He hopped in and started it up. I had gotten half a city block before he pulled up beside me. "Come on, we'll be fine. Don't worry." Like an idiot, again I relented. It had started out a beautiful, warm, clear day, but now the van was surrounded by police cruisers, and Ray had no other option than to stop. I was ripped out through the front passenger door and flung to the asphalt, with guns drawn. I was handcuffed and thrown into the back of one of the squad cars. I was taken to the nearest precinct, where I remained adamant that I was hitchhiking home when a friend from Regent picked me up. I hadn't seen any televisions. I was only in the van 6 blocks or so. Ray and I were taken downtown to the precinct in the area where the van was stolen. I was placed in a cell. Later on, Ray was placed beside me. He'd given the TVs back. We were both charged with theft, but released on our own recognizance. The police, however, had contacted my mother. There is no worse feeling on this planet than when you have to look in the eyes of the person who loves you the most and see their pain. Pain that you caused. My mother punched me repeatedly in the face, but that compared little to the pain in my heart. I remember trying to justify my actions in my mind. It was not my fault that I was born into a poor family. It was not my fault that I had to steal to have money. But I still knew it was wrong. My older brother, from jail, asked his lawyer, the Lion, to represent me. Ray, who was older than me, made a plea bargain agreement for 30 days in custody. My charge was dismissed. The 4 youths from the assault case were deeply admonished by the trial judge, even though they had decided to withdraw the charges against me. "Every one of you is bigger than this squirt," he told them, "and you called the police? Get out of my courtroom." I was not so lucky with the store detective and his sore groin. He pressed hard, but because it was my first offense, I received only a $50 fine. My mother could not wait for school to start again. I had no illusions that my second year of high school would mirror my first. I was right. The few classmates I had made friends with the year prior were now in different classes. I was once again a stranger to the other kids. Although my grade 10 scores remained passable, they faltered, along with my attendance, but I persevered. My mother was summoned to the principal's office shortly after school began for my 3rd year. She came, accompanied by my oldest brother, and with me in tow. "He never showed up for the first 2 weeks of school," the principal informed my mother. "I wasn't sure when school started," I told him. My mother looked at me sadly and half whispered, "Don't lie." Thwack! My brother slapped me in the back of my head. He was 13 years my senior. And then he walked into a class of students who hadn't missed a day, and he scored the highest mark on an exam. "How do you think those students felt?" the principal asked. "Did he cheat?" my brother asked, eyeing me suspiciously. "I don't know," the principal said. "Let's ask him." All 3 adults fixed their gaze upon me. "It was an open-text exam," I whined. "Can I help it if the other kids can't read?" Thwack! My brother slapped me again in the back of the head. "I could suspend him for a month, but I think that would only be giving him what he wants." My family nodded. "I have to do something, though, so I will suspend him for 1 week to give him time to think about his future," he concluded. "Okay," my brother said. "After that, he won't miss any more time. Right?" he asked me. As I began to think about it, he gave me a third slap to the back of my head. "Sure," I answered. I went back to school, and my brother went back to prison. He'd been in custody more often than not since I was born. I carried my brown lunch bags once again, but instead of food, they now contained small bags of marijuana. I was eating at the pizza shops and restaurants now, compliments of the profits I made off the other students. I didn't attend school half the time, and when I did, I didn't attend half the classes. Instead, I spent my days in billiard halls or at the homes of friends in Regent Park. I quit halfway through the school year. My mother was irate. I insisted I needed to earn a wage. During the previous 2 summers, and on school days missed, I'd been out stealing. My mother had her suspicions and agreed that work was an avenue to avoid this behavior. So I went to work as an assembler for a large power systems company. I had quit stealing, but still enjoyed smoking weed and having a couple of beers on the weekends. I enjoyed the job very much, and more so, I liked the people. Well, most of them. I lasted almost a full year. I came into work one morning and found myself immediately involved in a dispute with one of the foremen. He'd acquiesced to another worker's request to substitute me on the assembly line. I was to work in another department, most probably to do the job the other worker didn't want. I never found out. My replacement was sitting in my chair, at my station, listening to my radio, while he drank his coffee. I knocked him on his ass. He ran to the foreman, who came screaming at me. I packed up my tools and left. Chapter 2. The Crazy Years. Just after I quit my job, my oldest brother was once again released from prison. He'd bought the house 2 doors down from my mother's the last time he was home. He made good profit from the drug trade. And it didn't take him long to pick up right where he'd left off. Before long, the RCMP were out front, swarming him, his car, the house. I was sitting 2 doors up, watching, and my brother yelled at me to call one of our sisters. What can she do, I wondered. This was the cops. I called just the same. She sounded unusually alarmed and hung up. I walked out the front door, down the street, and around the corner. There, I put it in high gear and raced to my sister's. I saw her right away on her porch, looking furtively up and down the street. She held a large metal toolbox. "Go inside and watch the kids," she told me. A taxi pulled up out front. She had tears in her eyes, and I suddenly understood her situation. "I have a better idea. You go inside. Where am I going?" I asked as I relieved her of the toolbox. My brother picked me up a couple of hours later. "You shouldn't have gotten involved," he scolded. "She's my sister," I replied. "What are you doing for money?" he asked. "I sell a bit of pot here and there when I need it. Other than that, I'll find a job somewhere." "Well, if you're doing that, you may as well come with me and make some real money. What do you think?" "Sure," I answered, without a thought. I was ecstatic. I was going to work with my big, notorious brother. I didn't realize it at that very moment, but I had just made the worst mistake of my life. It was a decision that would haunt me for the next 40 years. My brother, through his partner, got me an apartment. I also got a car to drive, although I had no driver's license. But since I had no plans of stopping and I knew how to drive, it didn't matter. The fine in those days for failing to produce a license was $12. I was versed over and over again on the importance of being vigilant of police surveillance, especially tails, cars following you while driving. I was taken to an apartment building nearby where my brother introduced me to a very large lady and her young son. "This is our stash house," he told me. "No one comes here but us. The only way the cops can get here is if one of us screws up. Don't make that mistake. This lady could get in trouble, and if that happens, we have to get her out of it. Do you understand?" He was smiling at her as he told me this, and so I smiled at her as well, and reassured her I understood. "No one comes here. Be careful," he repeated. I was then given a pager and placed on call. I'd be told where and when to meet, who I was seeing, and how much product to bring. It was simple. It was trafficking in methamphetamine. Now, I'd grown up in the projects, but I was totally in awe of the world of speed dealers and users. The first apartment I entered had no furniture save a large bed and 2 huge leather chairs in a back bedroom. 2 girls, slightly older than I was, greeted my brother and me at the front door. They led us down the hallway to the bedroom. They were garbed only in panties and half-cut brasiers. I blushed. We entered the room as a man came out of the shower and proceeded to dress. He talked with my brother. He was very angry. He had to drive downtown. Some people owed him money, and now he was in a position of having to chase them down. He was fuming. He sat on a chair to put his boots on. "I'll kill them," he said, as he stamped his foot into a boot. Then he leaned back in the chair and went to sleep. Just like that. Out cold. I'd never seen anyone go from enraged to unconscious in 1 second. The 2 girls giggled. My brother laughed. The 2 girls were then handed a bag to put away for their friend. They then turned their focus on me. "Who is this little guy? Oh, he's so cute," they teased. "Would you like some cherry cheesecake?" they chided. I was flushed. "Cut it out," my brother told them. "You'll get to know him soon enough." Then he looked at me. "Ready to go?" "Oh, yeah," I answered, jumping out of the chair. I couldn't leave fast enough. The girls giggled again. "See you soon," the taller one said. I looked back. She pulled one side of her panties halfway down and winked at me as she waved. I blushed again. I would live with each of these women for a time, separately, in the next few years. Most of the people I met, I knew only by monikers. The German, the crab, the tall guy, the short guy, the fat guy, the little fellow. The most animated by far, though, was the King of Hearts. I met him one day as I was driving along the Danforth, a major Toronto thoroughfare, with my brother. He cut us off with his big black Cadillac and then braked. My brother stopped his vehicle and jumped out. The King of Hearts came swaggering up. "Brother!" he screamed as he hugged my brother. I stayed in the car watching all the pedestrians gaping at this spectacle. The king had a huge silver spoon the size of a small saucer hanging off an oversized silver rope chain he wore around his neck. On every finger he had bejeweled gold rings. They talked for a few seconds, then parted ways. After a few weeks of my new employment, I was introduced to an attractive older woman from Jamaica. She was white with blonde hair and a great build. She was a marijuana cultivator and also an importer of her product, Jamaican grass oil. I was given a bag to take to the stash house. Then I was told to go downtown to one of the head shops to procure a gross of 5-gram glass vials. Those I dropped at my apartment. Then I picked up my brother's partner and we went shopping for alcohol to soften up the black tar oil and a turkey baster to transfer the oil into the vials. We also picked up dextrose, a baby milk substance used to cut speed. I dropped the partner off at his car with the purchases. I then went to visit a close friend from Regent. Neither of us lived there anymore, but we'd kept in touch. I brought a plastic bag containing a dozen or so joints. We smoked a couple in his apartment and had a beer. Then the phone rang. It was his sister. She wanted us to retrieve her from the project so she could join us. I was reluctant, but he convinced me. It wasn't that far away. In Regent Park, everyone knew us, including the police. And as soon as we drove across the bridge, I saw them. Worse, they saw me. 2 beat cops who had chased me many times in the project. Now I was trapped. "Shit," I said, as I reached into my shirt pocket and took out the plastic bag. There was a hole under the dash, so I stuck the bag up in there, flipping it toward the back. I proceeded through the light. They turned the corner and right onto the rear bumper of my car, horn blaring. I pulled over. One approached my window. "Can I help you, officer?" I asked. "Don't get fucking smart. Ownership, license, you know the drill," he spat out. "Is there a problem?" I asked innocently. "That's it. Shut off the ignition and get out of the car," he ordered. His partner had come out on the other side and had my friend stand on the curb. "You too," he said to me, pointing at the curb. I went and stood beside my friend. "Papers?" one asked. "Glove box," I answered. Finding the ownership and mechanical fitness, he approached me. "Driver's license?" I patted my pockets, reached in, and then feigned disappointment. "I must have left my wallet in my other pants," I told him. "That'll be a fine," the cop informed me. "We're searching the car." "Go ahead," I said. "We weren't asking." the fat one scowled as they jumped into the front seat. My friend looked at me. He was nervous about the plastic bag. I just reassured him these two were idiots. "Aha! I got you!" the one cop yelled, smiling. He held half a cigarette of grass so old the paper was yellow. He'd pulled it out from under the floor mat. "You have to be kidding me," I said. "You have the right to remain," and on he went with the standard drill. "It's a big day for you guys, eh?" I sneered sarcastically. "Take down your pants, we're searching you," one ordered. "I'm not taking my pants down the middle of a street. Go fuck yourselves." "We'll take you to the station then, and we're going to beat the crap out of you," the fat cop said. "Go ahead," I dared. "I'm still not dropping my pants here." The two looked at each other, and then one returned to their cruiser and got on the radio. My friend and I stood there for another 20 minutes. Then they handed me a summons to appear in court for the roach and a traffic ticket for failing to produce my license. "That was close," my friend said. "You drive," I told him. "I lost my license," he told me. "That's okay, I never had one. Just drive," I said, handing him the keys. "Where to?" "Just go straight. I want to see something." As soon as we moved, 4 other cars parked in the immediate vicinity began to move. I'd noticed them when I was standing on the curb. I knew Regent like the back of my hand, and there was no reason why cars would be stalled or waiting in the spaces these people occupy. There were 2 or 3 men in each vehicle. I had my friend pull up in front of the nearby police station. I got out and went around to the driver's door. I stopped to give a fist pump to the idling cars stopped at the top of the street, then I got behind the wheel. I retrieved my bag of joints. The race was on. This was my first time being tailed in a vehicle, but I was in Regent. There was no way they were going to be able to maintain a tail on my car. This was my turf. I owned it, I told myself, as I wheeled this way and that through back alleys and side streets. Then I slid into the neighboring Cabbagetown area. About 20 minutes later, I merged into mainstream traffic, minus the tail. We never did pick up his sister that day. I took my friend home, gave him a few joints. I smoked one and had a beer with him at his apartment. I wondered about the undercovers. Then my pager went off. It was the partner. "My place, 7 o'clock, was all he said. I hung around for one more beer and then left. I watched for cops but saw no one around or following me. At 7, I took the empty vials up to the partner's apartment on the 4th floor. We were tenants of the same building. He already had the oil and alcohol from the stash house, so we went to work. I told him about the events of the day, but he shrugged it off as my imagination. Heating up grass oil, hard as tar, then diluting it with alcohol so that we could suck it up in the turkey baster to deposit it in vials, was a messy job. Each vial would develop air pockets I had to pop in order to fill it. Finally, after cleaning off the last vial and cap, I set it down on the kitchen table. We were done. Crack! The front door of the apartment cracked in half right across the middle. I assessed the situation. 4th floor, windows closed, blinds drawn, curtains pulled across them. I had nowhere to run. Crack! The second swing of their sledgehammer knocked the door wide open. The narcs spilled into the apartment. "Don't fucking move!" A huge bearded cop screamed as he shoved a shotgun in my face. I looked at him, then slowly, very slowly, raised my left arm and moved the barrel to the side, away from my head. "I've got to sit down," I told him. The cops were all over the apartment. They had 105 vials, each filled to capacity with Jamaican grass oil, staring them in the face, but they didn't look happy. They kept going into the back bedroom and talking. After 10 minutes, the lead narc took me into the bedroom with 2 other cops. "You think you're pretty smart blowing us off like that earlier tonight, eh, kid?" I feigned ignorance. "Down in Regent, you know what I'm talking about. You knew that was us," he said. I continued to play dumb. "Okay, where did the oil come from?" he asked. "It was mine," I admitted. "I bought it off a guy in the bar last night. Thought I could make a few bucks." "What guy? What bar?" I gave him the name of a rundown East End watering hole and said earnestly, "The guy didn't give his name, but if I see him again, I'll call you guys." The cops looked at each other, then broke out laughing. "Sure you will, kid," the lead narc said, patting me on my shoulder. "Sure you will." He looked at his men. "Okay, pack everything up and let's get out of here." They all left. With us and the oil, too, of course. At the station, they pulled the plastic bag of joints out of my shirt pocket and charged me with possession of those as well. In the morning, we were both released on bail. The partner could not wait to tell my brother about the tale in Regent. I found it ironic how the night before, just ahead of our arrest, in his opinion, the tale was just my imagination. My brother was pissed. "They fucking followed you? How many times did I tell you about that? Shit!" he ranted. "I'm pretty sure they didn't," I said. "If they had, they would have hit my friend's apartment while I sat there, and they hadn't," I reasoned. "You're not positive, though, are you? Who did you tell about the oil?" he demanded. "I didn't say anything to anyone," I answered angrily. "You're full of shit. How else would they have got to you two idiots? Shit!" He continued his rant. I just stood there silently. "Okay," he said after a few seconds. "Well, they know what you look like now. So if you want to keep working as the runner, the hair goes. Secondly, change the blue jean look. Go buy some dress pants and nice shirts. Shit, are you sure you never told anyone about the oil?" I looked him in the eye and shook my head slowly. Then I went out and made an old Italian barber a very happy man. Bruno was a full-grown, attack-trained Doberman pincer. The partner had bought him to protect a vacant house he was renovating for resale. Once inside, Bruno had other ideas. From the third floor, he spied a neighbor walking her dog. He backed up and ran headfirst right through the closed window. The smashed glass and Bruno fell onto the front lawn below. The lady got the door of her house closed behind her and her dog just as Bruno arrived. He tried to eat through her door. She called the Humane Society. Bruno was captured and placed in solitary confinement. His stubbed tail wagged a mile a minute as soon as he saw me come around the corner with his leash. The Humane Society officer looked at me strangely as I admonished Bruno. "Idiot! Next time run down to the first floor, then jump out the window. You could have got hurt." After that, Bruno stayed with me, especially during business hours. He wouldn't let anyone near the car, and had occasion to bite both my oldest brother and an associate who snuck up on me in the car one day, trying to be funny. I liked that. One morning, the landlord, thinking I wasn't home, used his key to access my apartment. I caught Bruno in midair as he lunged for the landlord's throat. "No dogs," he said, shaken, standing outside the apartment door. "Next time knock," I told him. I kept Bruno. A few nights after our release, the partner gave me a ride home, as my car had broken down. As we approached our building down a side street, I saw a few narcs from earlier that week. "Stop," I said, pointing them out. "Let's get out of here. They haven't seen us." Laughing, the partner replied, "Don't worry. They're just here for surveillance, to watch us." Then he pulled up right in front of the building, right in front of them. Upon seeing us, they immediately pulled their guns out. One narc walked over to me with a sledgehammer. "You're just in time to see me knock on your door," he smiled. "The landlord is already pissed with what you did to his door. Here, just use the key." I handed it to him. He took it and began to head into the building. "Wait!" the partner yelled. "He has an attack dog in there!" I couldn't believe he did that. Warned the cop. The cop turned around, walked back up to me, and punched me hard in the face. We were then placed in separate squad cars, and we were off to their police station again. When we entered, I saw the young boy from the stash house, and he saw us. "Mommy, your friends are here," he said. Right there, I knew we were in a world of trouble. As we were escorted down the hall, we passed a room that was occupied by the large lady. She uttered one word through her tears to me. "Please." I was put in a small room with 3 of the narcs. The lead detective said, "Well, kid, we pretty much know everything. We've been on to your brother, his friends, and suppliers for a long time. We know you're the runner. You thought we were stupid over the oil bust, didn't you? We had you as soon as your brother called his partner on a wiretapped line. All we did was trace the number to the location. We did think the glassware he was talking about was for a speed lab and not some stupid vials for oil. So that's how they found the apartment. And then your brother called the partner on the stash house line, and here we are. So, what I need to know is what involvement the large lady had in all this." The one thing I was thinking about was the only way the cops can find the stash house is if one of us screws up. Well, he had. And we have to get the large lady out of trouble. I said, "She doesn't know anything. I couldn't trust my landlord, so we kept the toolboxes in her apartment. She doesn't know what was in them. She doesn't even know the combinations for the locks. I always had her leave the apartment when I went there." That was all I could do to help her. And that was exactly what she had said, other than she included everything she could about my brother and his partner. They'd been involved with her long before I'd come on the scene. After all, she was not a player, She was a civilian, a mother with a young son. My brother had arrived at the police station minutes behind us. We were placed in the cells for the night, then taken in the morning to the bullpen of the old city hall for a court appearance. I'd never been there before and could not believe the amount of people crammed into that cage. All three of us were granted bail. The large lady had been released on her own recognizance. My brother and his partner had sureties present, so they were released. I was taken to the Dawn jail in a police paddy wagon. Stepping into the wagon, my wrists handcuffed to a strange older man on each side, was unsettling. The inside of the wagon was like an old tin bread box, only with a tin bench to sit down on along each side. A small fan set in the roof made a lot of noise, but offered no circulation. With the door closed behind us, all I could smell was stale tobacco, sweat, and foot odor. All I could think about was being helpless to turn back the clock. I'd made my bed the moment I agreed to work with my brother, and now I was lying in it. I took a breath and moved on in my mind. The wagon arrived at the jail, and I was ushered into a long range, just past the admitting desk. All the handcuffs were removed. The cops left. One by one, we were led out of the range to approach the desk for processing. Then we were led to a large room where our clothing was taken. Our other property, wallets, rings, gold chains, watches, etc., had been taken at the desk. I was given a set of jailhouse blues, a loose, baggy, long-sleeved button-down shirt, baggy button-up pants, and $1 running shoes. Every article had been worn by 100 people before me. Socks and underwear came in the bedroll consisting of 2 sheets and a towel. I'd grown a good 5 inches over the previous year, and was now nearly 6 feet tall, but still only weighed 120 pounds. I was escorted up a few flights of iron stairs by the guards. They left me with a surly guard on one of the many landings. The Dawn jail, old side, was filthy, Gothic-looking, gray. 2 ranges sat on each landing, one at each end. A heavy metal-barred black grille led onto an 80-foot-long hall of narrow, barred cells on one side of a 7-foot-wide corridor. 1 toilet and sink sat at the end. The guard I was left with stood in front of a portable classroom chalkboard filled with the surnames of the occupants of both ranges, young adults like myself. "I don't know where I can put you," he lamented. "I do," one youth yelled out. "Put him in a fucking broom closet." There were a few seconds of laughter from inside the range, and then another youth yelled, "Put him in here and we'll kill him." The guard looked back at his board. "Now I really don't know where I'm going to put you." "I do," I said, looking him right in the eye and pointing to the range that held my antagonists. "Right in there." "Okay," he said, and unlocked the grill. I walked past the 30 or so prisoners down to the back of the filthy, dusty range. I turned to face the crowd. A younger teen from Regent Park came up to me. "Hi," he said. "I thought that was you. Don't worry about these assholes. You'll be all right." I relaxed and sat down to talk with him. His nickname was Bug-Eye. I knew his older brothers. Most of the kids on this range were serving sentences between 7 and 90 days for minor offenses. They were mostly products of broken homes, foster homes, group homes, or training schools. They definitely lacked positive role models or proper supervision. Very few, if any, had had a good start in life. Very few had good hygiene either. A couple of guys approached me to inquire about my charges. I didn't feel like talking to them, so I just said selling pot. That night, I had to sleep on an old gray army blanket over a bed of metal springs, no mattress, the frame held off the floor by short wooden benches that ran along the corridor. These bed frames extended through most of the range, as there were only so many cells and way too many bodies. I didn't sleep much, and spent a lot of the night watching the huge dark rats scurrying up and down the wooden floors searching for food. The odd person would get bitten, but not on this night. I slept eventually. I woke in the morning with a group of teens my age surrounding my bed. "You're a fucking liar," one kid spat out as I sat up and put my feet on the floor. "You're not in here for selling pot," another kid said as I slid on my runners. "No?" I queried. "No, you're here for conspiracy to traffic methamphetamine," he answered. "So?" I said. Another youth asked, "What is that?" Right then, I knew they had no idea. They all would know what speed was, but the clinical name escaped their knowledge. I stood up. "It's pot. Now is there a problem here?" They looked at each other. "I'll find out," their leader said, glaring at me. "We have to go to work, but we'll be back." "I'll be here," I said. When they returned, I was on my way off the range for bail release. Gray, the leader, said, "You'd better not come back." I smiled. "Look me up when you get out. I'd like that." I was taken down to an area at the front of the jail. A justice of the peace sat behind a desk. On the other side stood my brother and a couple who I didn't know. I went toward my brother, but the older woman grabbed me in a hug and whispered in my ear. The JP barked at the guard to separate us and have me stand beside him. He eyed me suspiciously. "Do you know these people?" "Yes." "How?" he queried. "They've been friends of my family for years." "What are their names?" "Uncle Bob and Aunt Edith," I said. "Where do they live? Where are they from?" "Toronto," I answered. That didn't seem to satisfy him, so I nodded. "Downsview, to be exact." The JP was still hesitant. My brother stepped forward in his new pinstriped suit. "Can I have your name, please?" he asked, politely but sternly. "Why?" said the JP. "Judge Wilson saw fit to grant this young man bail. His sureties are present. If you deny him his freedom, I'll do